Okay, I think we're back live streaming and I think our technology glitch is being worked out with Councillor Fody. So if you don't see Councillor Fody, he is here and you may hear him, but you may not see him until he sorts his computer woes out. So we'll move forward with 5.2 Rise and Report from the in-camera, moved by Councillor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Grell. The council Rise and Report from in-camera, that the mayor report the following outcomes from in-camera. 1, in-camera minutes for March 13th, 2023 were adopted as circulated. And the second point is council received an update on information technology. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Moving along in our agenda is number 6, the consent agenda and the adoption and or receipt of minutes. Moving the motion is Councillor Gorell and seconded by Councillor Lackey that the April 11th, 2023 council meeting minutes and the May 1st, 2023 committee of the whole meeting minutes be adopted as circulated. And that the April 11th, 2023 public planning act meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, and that the March 28th, 2023 committee of adjustment meeting minutes be received and filed. Discussion on this motion, any errors or omissions? I see none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next item is staff reports. And the motion is to approve the staff reports as recommended at the May 1st, 2023 committee of the whole meeting. Motion comes forward from Councillor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Gorell. The motion is on the floor. Is there any specific report that anybody needs to have further discussion on that we need to pull, or can we address it under this motion? I don't see any hands up, so we will move forward. All those in favor of the motion at hand? All those opposed? And carried. Oh, that was somebody who just allowed the. Okay, next item is number 9, information items. And the information items, the motion comes forward from Councillor Gorell and seconded by Councillor Lackey that the information items be received and filed. Any discussion on any of the information items as presented in the agenda? There is quite a number of them. Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, 9.7 Fire Services Report.
Okay, if you'd like to ask your question or further clarification.
I guess when I read the report, this would be to the fire chief, Your Worship. I guess when I read this report, did it just happen to be coincidental that the fire training services cost and the balance out on the trainees was almost the exact same number?
Through Your Worship, that's on the sheet I gave out tonight. In conversation with the CAO, no, to answer your question, no, that didn't work out that way on purpose. That actually, I put all the numbers in based on what the hotel costs were, the food costs, the hours to be away, and all of the other incidental costs on that based on those different areas. And when we tallied all of that, that was the 126,003. That's what it came out as, just how that went, which I found kind of funny myself. Then when I looked at that, I retabulated everything. I was like, oh, that looks very suspicious, but that was actually how that worked out.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, that's my exact thoughts. I thought we're within a few $100s of sending our trainees out to be trained versus training them at the training center, albeit would we still have as many volunteer firefighters if we started sending them out?
Through Your Worship, that's a good question, because that was one of the ones I brought up to a number of my firefighters over the last week. And some of those first 4 courses would have been held in Clarence Rockland, which would have accounted for almost 13 weeks away from their families, away from Leeds Thousand Islands, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, for all of those weeks. And it was pretty much a unanimous no, we wouldn't be going that many weeks away. Obviously that wouldn't have happened over 1 year, but even to be away for 5 weeks for firefighter 1 to Clarence Rockland is a pretty big stretch. And it's tough now to get people that are at Station 2 in Sealy's Bay or Station 3 in north of Gananoque to go for 5 weeks just to Lyndhurst to try to be able to get that timing and get their time off and be able to do that and then be home at night, right? So these folks are putting a lot of hours in, and to be able to make them go away for all these courses, that would definitely be very detrimental to the amount of people we would have.
Very hard to quantify that in a dollar amount.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll ask one more since the chief is here, your worship. Thank you. With your new recruits that are near, well, I guess they have an exam to go this coming week, right? How many are in that number?
Through your worship, I believe we have 9 starting now. They're all on the floor. So they've done all their certification to Fire 1. So we're just awaiting their marks, but they all passed the practical part of that.
Oh, they
So
did.
yeah.
Okay.
So
And that brings our staff, so to speak, our numbers up to near 90.
no, because we've lost,
Oh.
it's still right around 82 total numbers. So we seem to gain 9 and lose 7, or gain 6 and lose 10. It's just kind of the way it goes on some of that right now. But
Great. Thank you.
And just to be clear, that the table that was provided to council tonight, this is the number of courses that have been completed in 2020.
2022.
2022.
And that was the cost based on what it would have cost to send them outside the
I just wanted to
municipality.
make sure I
Yeah.
understand the parameter
Yeah.
for the.
And sorry that I'm not quite sure how we didn't get that put in on the report, but
Any further questions in regards to this particular report? Seeing none, any other, I'll recognize Counselor maybe for another information item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mine comes from 9.4, the impact on page 7. It talks about royalties in their expenses. And I don't know whether anybody here can actually explain that, but it's, well over $4 million in royalties. So kind of what does that mean? And how does that reflect to our costing of taxation to the provincial government?
I don't think that is a question that anybody can,
Yeah,
our treasurer's shaking her head, but can be noted and we can find out.
please. Thank you.
So if we can send an email to Kim Bennett at MPAC, who is our local person, and we'll try to get an answer for you. So there was something. Oh, in regards to anybody have any other questions on any other information items? I just want to underscore the 9.6 fire services report, no parking area designation for 138 County Road 47, Main Street in Sealy's Bay. This was something that was brought up at county and had not been discussed here at council prior to going to county, sort of backwards. Certainly in favor of the safety and access for the firefighters. However, it didn't give local people an opportunity to express their support or displeasure, whichever way they would. So that's why it's on here and up for public discussion at some point. So I appreciate this coming forward so that we can punt it back to county to have that done for our fire service. Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, your worship. I just think at 9.8, we should acknowledge the LRC, the Lyndhurst Rejuvenation Committee. It's a prime example of partnership between Lyndhurst Rejuvenation Committee, funding through whatever source it may be in our township to accumulate reasonably sizable amount of money to accomplish the end goal. Hats off to LRC for maybe being the catalyst to make that happen.
Duly noted and supported, I believe, by most people here at this table. So without community groups and their contributions, there's a lot of things we wouldn't have or wouldn't see in the future. So thank you very much. I see no other hands up on any other information items. So seeing that there are none, I'll call the question that the information items be received and filed. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item is action required items. And number 10, And the first one is Corporate Services Report SR-88-23 Community Grants Spring Intake. Recommendation is that council approve the community grants spring intake distribution in the amount of $62,125. And that motion comes forward from Councillor Gorell and Councillor Lackey. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. At one time, was this fund 125,000 or am I forgetting?
It's
And that
split,
did
it's split
change.
between two intakes, one in the spring and one in the fall. So go ahead.
Through your worship. So there was previously, I think, 1 year where it was budgeted at 125,000. It's changed. I think COVID had a impact on it when we lost our casino, some of our casino money, that we then drew down some of these other things that were a little bit more discretionary in nature. So it was previously 125, I believe, in a different year. But as the mayor pointed out as well, earlier this year, we did bring a report that allocated a portion of the original budget to our cemetery grant too.
Just as
Go
a
ahead.
follow-up, perhaps next year we should look at the 125 again, if with the casino now back open, so that the cemetery is also looked after with the 25 and another, and the 100 is available for our community grants people that seem to be in dire need in some years.
Yeah, through your worship. So yeah, that's actually in the report that future years now going forward, we would be having two separate budgets, one for community grants, one for the cemetery grant, so that the community grant could be 100 or whatever council wished again, and then the cemetery grant would be a separate item.
Excellent. Thank you.
And so are there any other questions for Kate while she's at the microphone? Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, your worship, to our Director of Finance. I was just surprised at the lack of numbers for cemetery money. Is it the obvious, like there's too many cemeteries that are financially okay? They may not be well off, but they're okay.
Through your worship. So that's a good question, because we received more applications when we did the little amount that we had left from the community grants at the end of 2022. So I'm not entirely sure why, unless Steve has a better idea, but we're not entirely sure why we didn't get more applications this round. Now, we did disqualify a couple that we deemed not to be financially in need, but still, I think the total was only 5. So I honestly am not sure.
Well, I personally received 2 phone calls and sat in on another cemetery board. Of those 3, none would qualify. They have their own financing available. I mean, in their own realm, they see of themselves as not well off, but when you compare themselves to others, then yes, they are.
Okay.
So maybe that's it. Maybe the ones that are viable are just that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
Your worship, just to add to what Councillor Fody said, the cemetery fund was well established, a good idea, and we're going to see a little bit of this. But at this moment, some of them are more viable than we anticipate they'll be down the road, and that's based on my knowledge of some of the ones in the north end. So that fact that we've established it, we get the routine going, we'll get the business, so to speak.
Go ahead, follow up.
Thank you, your worship. On that note, Councillor Jameson, the BOA, the Bremen Ontario Association, is changing a lot of things as to how they're approaching cemetery boards, and some of them actually are offended at the aggressiveness. We'll see how this plays out, and some of them are actually at a point where, do we have to follow them? Can we go it alone? Well, I guess you should ask the BOA on that. But there is some aggressive action from BOA. Where their intent lies is yet to be seen.
Any further comments in regards to the community grant spring intake distribution? Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Sealy's Bay Area Residents Association, when I read the description of their request, it's for signage, now electronic sign, which they can advertise their events and goings on in the village. But the other is is village signage. Do we not have signage that is directed so that we're unified throughout the township?
I believe that's a bit of $1 million question, because if memory serves me correctly, the signage that we have that is uniform across the municipality, and the Director of Operations, Mr. Holliday, can speak to this, but I believe it was a fight with MTO in regards to where we could put up the sign, as far as the signage that goes in all of our hamlets. So the signage that I'll let Councillor Jameson further elaborate on that.
Yeah, the ministry refuses to let us put the common signs up on Highway 15. So it's the only village that does not have the opportunity. And then the signs that you'll see in Lyndhurst and everywhere else, Lansdowne, they were never made. So the village went ahead and is basically doing their own thing because we can't deal with MTO, and the township did their level best to try to deal with MTO, and we were turned down.
So the proposed new signage, I believe, is on private property. And that's how they're getting their signage put in. But sorry, just to add to that. Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
No, just follow up. If we have permission to put independent signs up somewhere where they need to be, why can't we put up the unified sign in that same position?
I'm not sure if that discussion has been had or if that's what Sealy's Bay is proposing. Maybe we should get some clarification on that.
To the extent I can tell you that the signs are not on MTO property. They're on the township right of way in both cases, but they're on private property. They're not on the township right of way, but they're not on MTO. They're on private property adjacent to non-MTO roads. So we're safe, if you will.
But you're looking to
No,
ask-
I understand that, but so if we have a place for these signs, why wouldn't we put up our unified signs in the same place?
Is that something that we can go back to?
I understand in
Sabera?
the context of this, that these signs that they have some sort of, what does it say in here? Historical, they like them, put it that way. I get that, but we have a sign bylaw and we went through the process of unifying the signs for all hamlets throughout. So I guess what I'm asking is, if we have a place to put the village signs, why wouldn't we use our unified sign in lieu of those signs? Which
Go
was
ahead.
supposed to happen.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Anytime we're dealing with private property and putting township assets on, we would need an easement to be able to go and take care and maintain the sign. An awful lot of private property owners might not be too enamored with granting an easement to us to do that. So there's also liability if the sign falls over on somebody, the property owner. That could be an issue as well. It's an interesting matter. We'll take another look at it to see what a little more on the issues of it. But just off the top of my head, of course, I always think about liability and risk. And if I'm the township, if it's going on our property, that's one thing. We can access it anytime we want to and maintain it. If we have an easement, if I'm a property owner, I'm never willingly giving easements to anybody, because that'll show up on title and that encumbers your property. And that makes it a little less attractive if you're going to sell it down the road. But
Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
I think if I'm understanding, and I appreciate your worship, the CEO's comments. I think if I'm understanding Councillor Lackey, the effort was to have the continuity across the township for these signs. And am I correct? And I think the challenge up there was the fact that we were turned down and everybody else got signs and Sealy's Bay didn't. So the village went ahead. But having said that, we're proud residents of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. And so I know that it'll be not a big deal to go back to the people that generated most of the money and everything else over the years to get this thing up and running, to talk to them about that kind of continuity, because that's important to us too up there for sure.
Go ahead.
Again, I support giving the money. I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it because they're nice signs. But again, I'm just wondering if we've gone to the trouble of doing this. Why can't we make it work there as well? But whatever way that they have it, that's great. That's fine by me.
So that's, I think, a good conclusion to that. Any further comments or questions in regards to the grants? I just want to make one final comment, and that is that it's so great to see so many applicants. The diversity of the projects that we're supporting through using some of the casino funds. You know, you start to realize how many people are involved with so many different groups and the work that they do to knit everything together around our township. And you know, and it's funny when you see sort of the Gananoque Canoe Club, one doesn't necessarily think, well, it's in Gananoque, why is that important? But just knowing that my kids had a place to go every summer, that they learned how to paddle and swim and were able to hang out with their friends as well and had a safe environment. Those sorts of organizations that serve our residents regardless of location and locale. In the Frontenac Arch Biosphere Network also providing great summer camps, both in the in all parts of the township. I don't want to go back to 1998. That's not my intent. But you know, it's just really nice to see so many different groups working together and providing great things for our residents, both young and old. And I will call the question on the motion at hand. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay, next item is the Corporate Services Report SR-107-23 2023 Cemetery Grant Program. Again, the motion is made by Councillor Lackey, seconded by Councillor Gorell, that council approve the 2023 Cemetery Grant Program allocation of funding in the amount of $14,025.07. Discussion on this motion. Seeing none, I will call that question. All those in favor? All those opposed? As carried. And the next motion that's coming forward is the administration report SR-111-23 appointment of the alternate member to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. Motion is coming from Councillor Lackey, seconded by Councillor Gorell, that the council appoint blank as an alternate member of the to the Council of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville during the absence of the mayor, and that the council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 23-033, being a bylaw to repeal and replace bylaw 23-027 to appoint an alternate member to the Council of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville during the absence of the mayor. This is coming forward because we learned after our last meeting that we appointed 2 thinking we were covering all of our bases, but under the Municipal Act, we can actually only appoint 1. So there's going to be a duel at dawn, and the 2 members of council will be. So we have Councillor Jameson and Councillor Lackey, who were appointed previously in the best interest, we felt, but due to the Municipal Act, we have to whittle it down to 1. So unless somebody has straws already broken off to draw, go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
After a very cordial and very short conversation with Councillor Jameson, with council's blessing, I would fill that spot until council deems otherwise, or if it gets attached to the newly appointed deputy mayor position, that's
Okay.
I'll fill in till then.
So is there anybody else around this table who wants to put their hat in the ring? Seeing not, I will fill in Mr. Lackey's name into the motion. So the motion reads that council appoint Jeff Lackey as an alternate member to the Council of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville during the absence of the mayor. 3 readings, final passage. I won't read all that again. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Thank you, Counselor Lackey. I'll do my best to not have to need you if possible. So next item is 10.4 Planning Report SR 089 23 of applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment D09 2023 01 D14 2023 003 450 Lyndhurst Road. Motion comes forward with Councillor Maybe and seconded by Councillor Fody that the council adopt the official plan amendment attached to planning report SR 089 23 as Exhibit F to amend the designation of the property municipally known as 450 Lyndhurst Road, Lyndhurst, from the commercial designation to residential, and that the amendment is forwarded to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville for approval, and that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment attached to the said planning report as Exhibit G to rezone the said property from general commercial CG to Hamlet residential RH. Discussion on this motion. I think it was pretty self-explanatory and we had some discussion earlier. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item on the agenda is 10.5 Planning Report SR 083 23 request to permit access across a township road allowance in concession 9 between lots 12 and 13, 221 LaRose Bay Road. Motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson. The council approved the request submitted to authorize the use of a portion of the unopened road allowance in concession 9 between lots 12 and 13 to provide access to the property at 221 LaRose Bay Road. This is the roll number 081281601531000. And that the applicant will be responsible for the costs and the maintenance of the access road where it crosses the unopened road allowance. And that the applicant enter into an agreement with the township to regulate the use of the portion of the unopened road allowance subject to the said application in a form satisfactory to the township legal counsel, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute the agreement. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Jameson, then Councillor Fody, and then Councillor Lackey.
Just in terms of responsible for the cost of maintenance, this is not, your worship, assuming that this applicant will be expected to maintain this road to a municipal standard.
That's a question I'm sure the planner can answer.
Through your worship. That's correct. This is a private road. It's a driveway. It's a gravel surface laneway to get to the applicant's cottage. So it would be to the standard that they deem necessary. The agreement would include indemnity, so the township won't be responsible for the care and control of the road. It's up to them to maintain it.
Thank you,
Okay.
worship.
And then I have Councillor Fody, then Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, your worship, through you. This is purely this motion here is to the report is to use the road, not to build anything of any kind of a structure on that property, correct?
Through your worship, that's correct. It's just a roadway. There's no structures permitted. It's purely access.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, your worship, and through you. Just to get my bearings through to the planner. I was just down there and I think it was end of March. The end of that road is a big white farmhouse. And there's a gateway right at the end of the road where our plows turn around. Is that where we're talking?
Currently the plows don't go down that far. It's a seasonally maintained road, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we turn around at the last home on the road. Okay, so I know where you are. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any further questions in regards to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item is planning report SR 085 23 Heritage Celebration Grant Application 1113 Prince Street, Lansdowne. And the motion comes forward from Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the council approve the application for Heritage Celebration Grant Application submitted for 1113 Prince Street, Lansdowne, for a value up to $2,500 in accordance with the Heritage Celebration Grant Policy. Discussion on the motion. Okay. All those in favor of the motion at hand? All those opposed? And carried. Just a quick comment, just to say, it's nice to see that some people are preserving some of the heritage and we're able to support it in some small way. And we wish them best of luck on those renovations or updates. Next item is Planning Report SR-095-23, update to Heritage Conservation and Celebration Grant Policy. And this comes forward from Councillor Maybe and seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the council approve the amendments to the Heritage Celebration Grant Policy as presented by staff at the Heritage Committee meeting on April 21st, 2023. And that the council grant 3 readings and final passage of bylaw number 23-034, a bylaw to repeal and replace bylaw 15-058, bylaw to establish a heritage conservation and celebration grant policy for the township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands as presented in Exhibit A to Planning Report SR-095-23. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So this particular one, how would that play for the previous one we just passed?
Through your worship, this wouldn't affect the one that was just passed. It would be the same. It's updates. The main incentive in this is to update the grant amount to $5,000 for new designations. The property that we just discussed in the previous approval is a listed property on the register. It's not a designated property. So it's nothing would change in that respect. The other thing with the update to the grant policy that's proposed is that it restricts eligibility to every 2 years as opposed to annually. So the property that we previously discussed received a grant application last year, so they wouldn't currently be eligible for an additional grant application. So
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item is 10.8, Planning Report SR-090-23, reallocation of funds in Municipal Heritage Committee operating budget. Motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Fody, that the council approve the recommendation of the Municipal Heritage Committee MHC to reallocate $2,000 from the MHC budget that was intended for consultants to training and education to allow for up to $2,500 for a member of the Municipal Heritage Committee to attend the 2023 Ontario Heritage Conference in London, Ontario. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I think this is a very good use, particularly with the Bill 23 and the new things that are on deck there. And with a municipal conference like this, they could really bring back some healthy information to our community to help us in the future with this. So I think it's a good investment.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next item, Planning Report SR-094-23, Proposed Provincial Policy Statement 2023 and Bill 97. Motion comes forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe. The council directs staff to prepare and submit a letter to the Government of Ontario through the Environmental Registry of Ontario's website, indicating its concerns with being requested to comment on proposed PPS changes, Provincial Policy Statement, by June 6, 2023. In the absence of any of the information on the proposed policy amendments to the natural heritage resource protection, and noting concerns with respect to the potential negative impacts as a result of the proposed lot creation policies on prime agricultural lands. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through to Director of Planning. I guess basically, how's this sit with you in what you're doing?
Through your worship, the recommendation that's in front of council is where our real concerns lie. The provincial policy statement's meant to be read as a whole. And in the absence of knowing what the natural heritage policies are, it's hard to read it as a whole and understand how all of the policies that are proposed relate to one another. In addition to that, up until this newest provincial policy statement, lot creation has not been something that was permitted on prime agricultural lands. The current policy statement proposed would allow up to 3 severances on an agricultural piece of property, which is a complete change from what's been permitted for a significant number of years. So there's concerns because the policies were in place with the intent to preserve prime agricultural lands for their long-term use. And this is contrary to the previous direction. So in the absence of having a full policy framework to review, we're challenged to offer meaningful comment.
Just a follow-up. Again, this kind of falls back to historically what was done here, because you could have 3 plots of land off of a farm on any piece of property. And it was in the 90s, I think, if I remember correctly, where they stopped doing that practice or something happened. And I know a particular home that ended up having to be built on a rock pile instead of the agricultural area. But anyways, interesting to find out what's going on.
I find it very interesting, just if I could provide some context in this discussion, that they are in the process of reviewing agricultural lands. They're doing a soil mapping exercise here in the county. And I'm not saying that's not a worthwhile thing to do. Of course it is. But, if we're looking at preserving prime agricultural land, and this to me seems contrary to that whole mindset. So I understand why our planner is struggling to provide meaningful comment when you look at it from that lens, that you're doing this over here to protect and make sure that you've taken a full inventory of agricultural lands within both Leeds and Grenville counties and across the province, to turn around and allow it to be chopped off here and there and everywhere. Generally speaking, most active farmers, I would say that they would want to preserve prime ag land at all costs, but I appreciate the feedback that our planner has given us. So go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. With this severance that they're speaking of now, is there any limitation to the size of each severance?
The challenge is it's a draft policy framework. So what the wording says is the smallest size necessary, or to be limited to the size necessary to adequately service a lot on private services. So realistically, for a lot on well and septic, you need an alternate location for a septic tank. You're looking at a minimum of 1.5 acres to 2 acres. But the policy statement doesn't go that far. So it would fall back on our official plan policies and our zoning bylaw to be updated to reflect what that would be, or to an applicant to determine that through a study. But at the same time, again, I wrestle with if the proposed policy spoke to additional severances on rural lands that have limited agricultural capacity or capability, as opposed to prime agricultural lands that are designated as such, we may be looking at it differently, but it's a significant policy shift to say that a severance could be permitted on an agricultural piece of property that's been protected for a number of years.
Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Regarding the provincial policy statement in general, even though we are, this is asking that the planning department put forward some comments as asked for, but the provincial policy will still become a very public discussion. Am I correct in that assumption?
That's
That
the
the public
process.
will have the process, they will have the ability to, when we revise our our official plan, taking into account the provincial statements, the public will have a chance to have some input on this.
Through your worship, no, that's not the case. This is the commenting period right now. It's posted for commenting period till June 6th. One of the policies that's in the new provincial policy statement draft that's new is that notwithstanding any official plan policy or zoning policy, municipalities shall have no more restrictive policy than what's in the provincial policy statement. So if we have existing policy that would be contrary to what's proposed in the policy statement document, the policy statement document would override our local policy and would give effect to those changes.
And follow up, when would the process be taking place? When does when does the provincial policy statement come into effect this time around? Because it's reviewed every 5 years, is it?
Through your, I can't respond to that because they don't, it's variable when it's reviewed depending on the government. So
Surprise.
this current one is posted for comment until June 6th.
Okay.
I would hope that there would be comments submitted through various groups, agencies, municipalities during this commenting period, which is what we're proposing right now.
Right.
That might lead to some changes before they finalize what it's actually going to be.
Before the province finalizes the PPS,
That's correct.
and then it will flow downhill to our municipality to review and revise our official plan and the county plan. Is that correct?
Yes, there would have to be subsequent policy amendments, but as I said, there's transition wording proposed that would immediately give effect to the policies within the provincial policy statement, notwithstanding what our local policy may be.
So it's an override.
Yeah, similar to what's been done through Bill 23 with respect to 3 units. So the fact that we only currently have zoning that would allow for 1 or 2 units on a property on full municipal services, we have to allow up to 3 because the provincial policy overrides our zoning.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.
Well, that makes it clear as mud. Thank you for that explanation. And it is, I know that while the province may have the best of intention, how it rolls out and it gets implemented at a local level is something a bit different. But this obviously came forward to us to support our planner to provide a letter and submit that to the government on our behalf. So if there's any concerns with that, please put your hand up. I don't see no hands, so I believe that I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And carried. Next item is 10.10 operations report SR-101-23 Escott Sand Dome. And the recommendation and the motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe and second by Councillor Fody that council authorize staff to proceed with the dismantling and disposing of the Escott Sand Dome located at 1369 County Road 2. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through to Director of Operations. So in your report, it noted that it's not being used anymore and that all the sand and salt is being brought out of the Lansdowne reservoir here. So the salt really has gotten to that dome and it's done, is what we're hearing.
That is correct.
Yes. So thank you.
Okay. Any further comment or question in regards to this dome? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Next item on the agenda, operations report SR-106-23, RFT OPS-2023-018, prepare and resurface flooring. Moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Fody. The council approved the award of tender OPS-2023-018 for the repair and resurface of flooring at various township facilities to Interior Concrete Coatings, Inc. in the amount of $99,271.96, inclusive of the net HST. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Fody, and then Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you, the Director of Operations. Can you give us a couple examples of what floors you're looking at here?
Yes, sir. Thank you through your worship. We're looking at out back at the garage, the main floor of the garage, including the washrooms and the lunchroom. Right now, it's paint coated concrete that has not been recoated, I don't think, since the building was reconstructed. We are looking at the upper floor space at 1 Jesse Street, which is currently carpet over top of concrete. We're looking at the library at 1 Jesse Street, which we are reviewing because there's some challenges with the shelving, I've been told. Office space at the fire station at fire station number 3, the training room, which is carpet over top of concrete right now. We are looking at the Sealy's Bay Library, which we're reviewing that one again, because apparently the carpet is in better shape than we had anticipated. The canteen space and washrooms at Centennial Park. office space at Fire Station 4, and canteen and washrooms at Kendricks Park.
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Maybe.
Thank you, your worship, and through you. When I looked at the bids, there was quite a wide disparity between the highest and lowest by $113,000, considering this company only wants 99,000. Did they throw the bid, or do you think it was accurate?
So the numbers make sense with, sorry, through you, your worship, the numbers make sense with what they have bid. I did have some concerns with the discrepancy or the variability of the pricing as well. So I did check the references of the low bid, and they were glowing. Everybody that has worked with this group is very happy with the product. There haven't been any deficiencies. There haven't been any warranty issues or anything like that. So, you know, that everything points towards this group being a good company to work with.
Excellent. And the final question, when they take off the old carpet, they're basically taking and polishing the concrete and leaving it as concrete sealed?
That is correct. Through your worship. We received two prices for them. If there is bare concrete, it's one price. And then if there is, if we do have to do refinishing of the concrete, similar to out back with the paint and everything, they will remove and polish and get it prepped for the epoxy.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Any further questions on this motion? Go ahead, Counselor Grow.
Sort of a sidebar on that motion. Does that company do exterior concrete work? Do you think? I see their name is interior?
Through your worship, we are going to try a section of exterior. In the back building here, the concrete does extend outside of the doors. So we're going to seal that concrete with the epoxy as well. And I'll let you know how that works out. It's just a small area, but we'll have a better sense of,
Thank you
how
very
it
much.
ends up.
Great. Any further comments or questions? I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next item is operations report SR-105-23 RFT-OPS-2023-016 rehabilitation of the Ivy Lee Small Craft Wharf. And the motion comes forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe. The council approved the award of tender OPS-2023-016 for the rehabilitation of the Ivy Lee Small Craft Wharf to Kehoe Marine Construction Limited in the amount of $2,216,011.85 inclusive of the net HST. Discussion on that motion, Councillor Fody and then Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, your worship. Through you, is there a time frame established or is it too early? We haven't awarded the tender yet, but was there an anticipated time frame to accomplish this?
Thank you, through your worship. With the project, our anticipated start date was in July. It's the soonest that we can get in water, with an expected completion by into the fall. So we'd be looking at, I'm expecting we're going to be about 3 months on this project. Once we've awarded this, then one of the requirements that we request from them is their schedule, the proposed schedule, and they'll provide that back to us at that point. They'll have a better sense.
Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, your worship, and through you to the director. 2.216/011/85. With the purchase of the property on the other side of the road and the design, does that still keep us within our allotted budget?
Thank you, through your worship. That does keep us within our allotted budget. I believe at the last report I provided you, we were looking at $2.6 million all inclusive. So the remainder, I think I gave the remainder of how much was remaining in the budget. That is all inclusive at that point. How much is remaining?
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, through your worship. For the public, the reason for starting in July is for the protection of fish habitat. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's
Thank you.
our in-water window.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's MNRF.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions in regards to the award of this tender? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Thank you. Next item is 10.13, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Fody, and it's an operations report SR-0-102-23 RFT-OPS-2023-008 for a tandem dump truck complete with snowplow and sander. The motion reads that council authorizes staff to award tender RFT-OPS-2023-008 tandem dump truck complete with snowplow and sander to AB and Schmidt Canada, Inc. in the amount of $428,790.08 inclusive of net HST, and that the council approve the allocation of $428,790.08 from the fleet, machinery, and equipment reserve fund to fund the purchase of the tandem dump truck in 2023. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councilor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through to Director of Operations. In the report, it did indicate that this is the same body style as all trucks that we have presently. So it is going to fall into our replacement parts and category and make it a little easier to maintain. And that trucks are a little bit more expensive than we first thought a year ago.
Yes, that is correct. It's exactly, so Abby Schmidt has purchased ELP equipment, which the rest of our fleet is all ELP equipment. It is a Western, which all but one are all Western Star trucks in our fleet. So like you said, the amount of stock that we have to maintain the fleet doesn't grow as a result of this. The price of trucks has grown dramatically. When we were up at Good Roads, we spoke with another vendor who supplied body similar to Abby Schmidt. And we told them what the price was that we had seen, because we just closed the tender at that point. And it seemed to align with what they were seeing with other municipalities that they had bid on. So that's our new reality at this point.
Yeah.
The price of the trucks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the director. Is it because of availability that nobody is in on this game now? They just don't want to promise because they're not sure they can provide? Is that why there's only one submitted bid?
Through Your Worship, that's a really good question. The spec that we used this time was different than specs that had been used at the municipality previously. It's one that I had used. Obviously, it's updated with the new tier 4 requirements and all those types of things. But it's open to all vendors. It's open to international to be able to bid on it. It's open to Viking Surveys to be able to bid on it. Not sure what the challenge is. I have heard some challenges with the availability of trucks with international as an example, but there are other vendors out there. I'm not sure why they didn't bid on this. It could just be the availability, like you said, of fleet at this point. And these guys, they had. I think we put our bid out at the right time. When I had a conversation with Abby Schmidt up at Good Roads, I said December. I thought we were looking at April, and they said, "Well, we'd had a conversation with you guys previously, knew that it was coming down the pipe, so we had sort of earmarked a spot for you guys." Everything else right now after this truck, they're looking at 16 months delivery. So we were accurate with that assessment. We just, for some reason, we got lucky.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any further comments or question? Just for the benefit of those listening, when it comes to the costing associated with this is a dramatic increase. And, I know the report does speak to that, but when you look at what we've paid in the past, and when we are required to have a certain standard of vehicle that'll be able to provide the services and meet the expectations of the residents, it's a dramatic increase. So the previous one was purchased at 305,000, and now we're at a total of 428 plus net HST. So, you look at it from the point of view that this is a 50% increase year over a couple of years. So it's painful, but necessary to ensure that we can deliver the services. Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just an add-on. In the highway transportation industry, it's the same picture. Trucks 3 years ago were a little over 200,000. Before HST, they're now over 300, and availability is seriously delayed. I know a large company that puts their foot down for 200 units a month, and they're being allotted 12.
So we are fortunate. We did get lucky by the sounds of it to secure this particular tandem. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's carried. Next item is operations report SR-109-23 RFT-OPS-2023-020 janitorial services for municipal facilities, 2-year term. Motion comes forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that council approve the award of tender OPS-2023-020 for the janitorial services for municipal facilities to Riverstone Janitorial Service and Sales in the amount of $30,426.24 per year, inclusive of net HST. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through to the Director of Operations. This is the company presently who is doing the work around the township anyways. So they've just rebid through the process. That the report does say, just for people who want to know that, but and there was a disparity in some of the costs there in some of those entrants also, if I remember correctly. Didn't write down the exact differences, but thought it was, yeah.
Thank you, through your worship. There was the spread, the lowest bid that we received was for 23,750. And it escalated about $10,000 for each group or thereabouts. There was one bid for over $300,000.
Yeah.
I didn't bother following up on that one or checking the references because their unit rates, everything made sense in terms of what they submitted. Yeah, they were substantially more than everybody else.
Yeah, thank you.
Discussion, further discussion, sorry. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Next item is 10.15 operations report SR-110-23 RFT-OPS-2023-021 supply and delivery of one wheel loader. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson. The council approved the award of tender OPS-2023-021 for the supply and delivery of one Doosan DL 220-7-US 11 model wheel loader to Hardington Equipment in the amount of $243,866.07, inclusive of the net HST. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor, maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Operations Director, I noticed that in the price breakdown as you had it, on the second one, it was about $1,500. Well, actually, it's number 3 in the list because they were the same machine, just that one had a excuse me, a higher lift advantage. Is there any, for $1,500, would it be an advantage to actually have it?
Thank you, through your worship. In some industries, trucks are utilized for more than one purpose, and municipalities or companies will put a body inside of the body where you have to lift that extra foot or 16 inches type thing. We don't have that. We use our bodies in the back of our trucks for hauling gravel, but also putting sand in. So we don't require that additional lift. In talking with some of I spoke with one contractor and I'd spoken with another one previously as well about a high lift. There's certainly more wear and tear as a result of having that additional moment arm.
Yep.
We're working around curbs and all those types of things as well. And the further you get away from the operator with the bucket, the higher the occurrence of damage.
Yeah.
So our recommendation is not to go with the high lift in this instance. This is similar to the loader that we have currently. It has the same amount of lift, so I think it'll meet our purposes.
Okay, no, not a problem. That's good. One follow-up. I noticed in the approval line that Steve, you liked it so much, you approved it twice.
That's
good. Thank you.
Councillor Grell, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, your worship. What else do we use that loader for? Is it just a sand and salt loader?
Through your worship, no, our loader we use for loading gravel. We keep a stockpile of gravel here. We have pipes as well. So we will load all the pipes. We'll load all the gravel with the loader. We'll take it out to a job site where we have to load gravel into a hole as well. It's used for winter operations in terms of the snow removal in the villages. So it's actually a unit that we use 12 months of the year, which is why
Does
know-
it require a float?
for longer distances, the recommendation would be to float it. Like if we were to have to send it to get repaired up in Ottawa, then we would certainly float it. We can float it with the float that we have currently.
Okay.
But for the most part, with us being fairly small, we can road it from one location to another as well.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. These particular brand are deemed relatively new to the business. Having said that, the larger companies, construction companies in Kingston are all repeat buying this very same model. That bodes well.
Yes, to add to that, I did reach out to Gilbert, was the contractor I spoke with locally, who historically had purchased Liebherr or other name brands. And when I had a conversation with him about the Doosan, he said, I'll never buy anything else again. So I know Jack Gilbert myself, and when he said that, I knew that it was a quality piece of equipment.
Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And carried. Next item on the agenda is 10.16, Councillor Lackey's notice of motion amending zoning bylaw number 07-079, marine facilities. Motion comes forward with from Mark Jameson and seconded by Terry Fody that the council directs staff to initiate a zoning bylaw amendment application, including a statutory public meeting to amend the definition and zoning provisions with respect to marine facilities in zoning bylaw number 07-079 to permit rooftop outdoor amenity area and to eliminate the regulations regarding the straight line projection of a side lot line and maximum length. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Lackey, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. With your indulgence, I may take a minute or two here. Prior to my comments, I'll just say that, you know, in bringing this forward, and I appreciate the opportunity, it comes from sitting around this table for a number of years and also sitting on Committee of Adjustment as well for a short time, where I've seen a lot of these reports come through. So before I do, I'm just going to pass around the table. They're not photos, they're just little clippets of various things, just to keep in mind as I speak.
Here. Sorry, we'll just pass them when he's done.
Thank you.
Their
Worship.
photos,
And
are
can
they
you-
examples of?
Yeah, they're just kind of examples, things to keep in mind on points that I will make.
Okay.
So basically, the main point that I wanted to bring forward was the approval of rooftop patios. And one of the reasons for doing that is it seems to come to council and ends up being kind of a civil matter per se between neighbors. They can be very, you know, very, they could go to the tribunal or they could be very civil. But at any point, the reason I did this is if you take a boathouse that's already there or is being built, it's a space over the water that is already permissible. If I'm a water person or I want to enjoy my water view, my water activities, to put a patio on top of that boathouse is a perfect use. It brings me to the area I want to enjoy. And I don't have to harden the shoreline. I don't have to cut trees down. I don't have to blast rock. I don't have to put concrete across the front of my property because that space is already there. So I think it's a smart use of space, and I don't think it needs to come here. I think if we just make it a space or make it something that is acceptable within the bylaw. If there is a neighbor dispute, then that's civil. That shouldn't come to council for us to become all of a sudden a referee. Well, my rights, my this, my that, there is no expectation of privacy, number one. It's no different than having a deck in your backyard here in the village. You're close to your neighbor. You're going to be outside on your deck. Your neighbor's going to be outside on your deck. You're going to have a backyard fire. You're going to do all those things. They're all permitted uses on your property. So again, there's no hardening of the landscape. There's no cutting of trees because that boathouse is already there. Now I threw in some of the other points with the total length. Now, if you look at some of those pictures, there's a reason for this. One is typically you're not going to build something that you don't need. Now, in some of those pictures, I may be in a not such a great spot as far as water depth. So I need a ramp of 45 feet long to get out to my 30-foot dock. Well, that ramp is included in your maximum length of your dock. I think that's wrong. In some cases, it could be usable, for instance, for a kayak or for some shallow draft toy. But overall, no, I think docks are not our jurisdiction. Docks are something that Transport Canada deals with, that CRCA perhaps, with being in proximity of wetland or what have you. But I think it's not for us to say if the length of dock doesn't affect or impede navigation. I think that is something for us, for our planning department, to not have to deal with as well. One thing that I did not put in this was perimeter. Sorry, let me go back to side lot projection because that's one that is in my motion. Side lot projection is not side lot setback. To my knowledge, side lot projection is if you have a lot which is not rectangular or square, it's not a straight line. Your lot line project, if you have a triangular lot, it's wider at the road than it is at the water. That means your projection is narrowed in as you go out into the water. So, it could mean that your dock can only be 30 feet long. So we still have that dock having setbacks from the property lines. That doesn't change. You're still going to have to be 4.6 meters from your lot line that your dock has to be from either side. That will remain. It's just that projected lot line. Because again, if I have a lot that maybe has one side that angles in, that's going to, if you're going to put in a dock, you're going to put it perpendicular to the water, not the land. You want to get out, you want to project out into the water. You don't want to project to your neighbor. Nobody wants to do that. Again, it would come back to some common sense. So it's side lot projection, not side lot. And I wanted to make that clear. I tried to get the wording so it was better understood. The other thing that I didn't add that I'm hoping will come in conversation to the public meeting, because all this is based on what we learn. Perimeter is something that comes quite often to Committee of Adjustment as well. So one of the pictures I have written perimeter right on it, and it takes into consideration finger docks. So in a perimeter, you take the outside edge of each area, each dock. But if I put a roof over top of that whole section, guess what? That perimeter is now the roof line. It's not the dock line. So how does that make sense? It doesn't. We've had these rules in place for a while, these bylaws. We now know how they've worked out for us. And I think we can do a better job. And again, I think we need to limit some of these because of staff time, because of council, them coming to council for perhaps some of the wrong reasons. So again, I look forward to the information that comes forward, but these are the items that I have seen at this table and at Committee of Adjustment that I'm sure they don't want to deal with either. And when they do, they use a common sense approach, which is why it ends up here, because they approve them. So if everybody's on the same page, it's a streamlined thing that really doesn't, it's over the water, so it shouldn't concern too many people.
Okay, so comments, questions in regards to what's being proposed here in the motion? Councillor Gorell?
Thank you. Through you, your worship. I remember before I came on council, the official plan was being bantered around and it was a massive public deal. And a big part of that was marine facilities. And if my memory's right, it got bantered around a lot and it got revised. And the overriding concept was islanders have a right to have a marine facility in order to use their property. And they're actually given a little bigger deal because they might have guests over than a mainland property. This appears to me to blow that out of the water, pardon the pun. I don't see this is a very serious recommendation, and I'm just not prepared to support it. I understand the one point, and I'm not necessarily against it, and that's the concept of rooftop patio. I am on record as stating what's bothered me is that those have the planners, the planning consultants, and the contractors seem to have devised you go to a committee of adjustment, and then the committee of adjustment, rooftops are not permitted. And then it comes to us for a zoning bylaw. I'm getting a little tired of that personally. So if the planning department or recommended to us that we could go ahead in a form, I might not object to that. And the Muskoka deal has certain provisions in there that if you want to do that, they can be limited in size. The amount of usable space on top can be limited in size. Now, Muskoka, if my memory is correct, that really gets down to a boathouse with a top enclosure. But they do put square footage that is less than the footprint or less than the roof line of the marina. That was my intense reading of that. Regarding, I'm still very confused as to what we're talking about there with straight line projections, to eliminate it and then to eliminate the maximum length. Maximum length of what? The boathouse? This to me is just opening the season of all the work that went into defining marine facilities. And I would not take this lightly, and I would not, the way that is worded, I will not support it. I couldn't see possibly this council could support that. The way it's worded, it's too overarching. It's just trying to, in my opinion, it is flying in the face of the official plan that we put together or previously put together, and it's going to be rehashed. I am on record as saying that the public is privileged to use their waterfront. It is not owned by the person. It is public water governed by the Ministry of Natural Resources. And they turn some of that over to municipalities, in my opinion, to allow marine facilities. It's not your darn property. Thank you. I could go on and on, but I'm not going to. Thank you. I will not support this as written.
Further comment or question in regards to this? Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I guess I would start with a question to Director of Planning. This proposed changes to the provincial policy, will this overlap onto this in some way, shape, or form, or is that yet to be seen?
Through your worship, it's yet to be seen because we have no natural heritage policies that are proposed at this point in time. That being said, with the current natural heritage policies that exist, such an amendment wouldn't necessarily impact. Every zoning bylaw amendment is required to be consistent with your official plan, which is required to be consistent with your provincial policy and your planning act. So it's a tiered process. I don't think specifically what's proposed is. I would like to speak to process and some of the background around this. I don't know if you want me to speak to that now or if you want to.
You might as well.
So With respect to the motion, staff have brought forward reports previously speaking to boathouses, rooftop sun decks. Waterfront property isn't uniform. Property configurations vary significantly depending on the location. I appreciate the intent of the motion. However, for staff to bring forward a zoning bylaw amendment, and there's obviously a public process associated with any zoning bylaw amendment through the review of marine facilities if the motion is approved. But it's not as simple as saying, take this out, take that out, and add this, and it's good to go. Any recommendation that I'm prepared to present to council has to be based on a defensible position and understanding of what the impacts of those amendments are, to be able to say if it is consistent with our official plan and provincial policy statement. So while I don't have concerns with reviewing our marine facility provisions and seeing if there's ways to improve things, because there's always ways to improve things and address other things, to look at the intent, but I'm not comfortable saying it's just a change to this, it's just a change to that. I think it needs to be a broader process, and I think that there needs to be, obviously, any amendment has a public component to it. So I would say that I do have a concern with the lot line projection being omitted, only in that we have to look at what the impacts are on other properties. And it's because property lines aren't uniform and everybody has a different context when you're looking at their waterfront. So again, I just come back to the fact that if we're looking at doing an amendment to the marine facilities provisions in the zoning bylaw, staff are going to have to take that back. We're going to have to research what's out there, how other people do it, look at the best practices, look at the various scenarios that may result. And as Councillor Grell mentioned, in some situations, in some contexts, it may be absolutely appropriate as of right to allow for that rooftop sun deck, but we have to look at what that context and what the appropriate provisions are in terms of limiting size, scale, impact, and ensuring there's setbacks. So I just wanted to provide that the policy or the process would be a zoning amendment process, but it's something that's going to need staff time to go back and look at and review and prepare the necessary information, because any amendment is subject to a potential appeal and we have to be able to defend the position that we bring forward.
So based on what the planners just brought forward, would it be appropriate, because I know that your notice of motion came forward last week when the planner was away, and I know our assistant planner helped formulate this, but would it be appropriate to not table the motion, but defer the motion to allow for further discussion with the planner to flesh out possibly amendments, changes, a better wording? If we defer it, the same motion comes forward at a later date, but we can amend it or withdraw it at that time. But I think the intent, Councillor Lackey, was to kind of look at this and see what the process is and what we could do simply and what would need larger if there was anything simple to be done. But then what the policy or procedure would be to make any sort of changes. And I take Councillor Grell's comments as much as I take Councillor Lackey's position, but we want to make sure we dot every I and cross every T, and that we don't expose the municipality in any way. So go ahead, Councillor Grell.
To you, Your Worship, I appreciate that approach, but we have in front of us a very broad recommendation. And why don't we could also defeat this, and at a future date, we could instruct staff to, if we wish to, instruct staff to look at the marine facilities in some general sense, but it doesn't really have to bear on what is in front of us tonight if we're being asked for an up-down vote. I don't see that deferring this, you could rewrite it 100 ways and it still doesn't pass the test. I suggest we defeat this motion, and then if the intent is to have a look at the marine facilities bylaw, well, fine. We will ask in a separate motion to have that done. But then this won't be hanging over us. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jameson.
When we went through the discussion of the moratorium and reviewing the whole thing on that basis. We heard that there was quite a cost involved. And what I'm reading into this is that there is a cost involved. We're talking about staff time, but we also understood we were going to have to go outside and get people to help us, Your Worship. Do we anticipate as we move down this road, if we do in some form, that we have a cost that's comparable to putting the moratorium in and doing, I'm sorry, I have to be reminded about what that
Zoning
means.
bylaw amendment application and the statutory public meeting and to amend the definition and zoning provisions with respect to marine facilities.
Right, but if we had done the moratorium, we were going to have
Consultant.
we were going to have there was a term for what that was.
Oh, sorry.
Through you, just to explain that in a little more detail, with an interim control bylaw, there's a defined time frame. You have a year in which to complete your study, get your amendments completed, and have your policy in effect. So there's a tight window in doing that work. And the thing with the interim control bylaw is it puts a hold on anything going forward. Under the current proposal of doing a zoning bylaw amendment, it would allow things to proceed as usual. Now, staff do have a pretty significant work plan in front of us, an application load right now. So this isn't something, if it were to be supported, that would be, we're coming back in the next 2 to 3 months. Obviously, this is going to take some time. We're coming into the summer months where we have a heavier workload. So at this point, given everything on our schedule with respect to the community improvement plan applications and some of the other stuff we're working on, I can't give you an estimated time frame without going back and looking at our priorities and trying to figure something out should such a motion be successful. But that's, if staff are to initiate this, there's going to be a time element to it. I can't say what that is for certain, but we could if we reported back to council in looking at our work plans. There's the difference. So I did say that with the proposed interim control bylaw, we would be looking at a consultant cost of approximately $80,000 at that time, because we would be looking at having a consultant go out doing a best practices review of a number of municipalities, a greater type of public consultation component to that than simply doing a zoning bylaw amendment.
So
Follow up,
I'll let you
please.
do a follow-up and then I'll recognize Councillor Lackey.
So in the context of not doing that, but doing something else, are we really not going down the same street, only a little more slowly? It strikes me, Your Worship, we're going to have to get some people in to work on this with us, because the moratorium was really to slow down the anger around all these things. And it's reasonable. It's reasonable, in my view, the tension between neighbors and so on and so forth. When it's left to us to adjudicate whether we want to or not. So if we're going to review this marine facility bylaw and seek amendments, are we not really going down the same road, except it's going to, one, take longer, and two, we don't have a fixed time, but three, we're going to incur considerable staff costs at the very least to get there. So I'm just trying to figure out what the heck the difference is, other than time frame and the front end costs that you know about, because this is a little too prescriptive. If we were trying to work on an amendment and we brought the public in to talk about it, there's a couple of prescriptive lines in here that will raise a lot of dust or water or whatever it would raise in terms of people being upset. So I have a lot of problems with it being prescriptive, but I don't have a problem with the idea of doing something to try to resolve this, get it out of the committee of adjustment crosshairs all the time, and find something that's is at least somewhat acceptable to the people that are fighting it.
Okay.
Or not fighting it.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
I think, Your Worship, at this point, it'd probably be in the best interest of everyone and in the length of our meeting, if I withdraw the notice of motion until I can have time to spend with the planner.
I wish I could take that verbatim, but the mover is Counselor Jameson and seconded by Counselor Fody. So I have to ask both the mover and the seconder if they're willing to withdraw the motion at this time. And we will go down a different path at a later date, once more discussion and robust discussion with the planner about process and bringing something back that may be more palatable to the group. So Counselor Jameson, Counselor Fody, how do you feel about that? You're willing? Okay. So this is withdrawn at this point. Still think that the conversation was definitely worthwhile, and I look forward to further discussion down the road in regards to these items. Next on the agenda is Mayor's update. So I'll try to be brief. This week is Emergency Preparedness Week, and this year the theme is Be Prepared, Know Your Risks. The intent of the theme is to encourage Canadians to understand the risks in their area and learn what actions they can take to protect themselves and their families. Take action so that you, your family, and your community are prepared for emergencies. This week is also Nursing Week. Nurses leverage their skills and ability and judgment to advocate and promote health in countless ways and in all sectors of our community. We thank all the nurses that serve our community, our friends, and our family. Mother's Day will be celebrated on May 14th. Visit the community events calendar on our website for upcoming Mother's Day events, including Mother's Day brunch and more. The May long weekend is quickly approaching. Make sure to check out our 7-day use parks and splash pad that are scheduled to open on May 19th. We also will be celebrating Public Works Week here at TLTI for the annual Touch a Truck event on May 25th from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Make sure to bring a food item for donation to the food bank. We will have a barbecue, I believe, and donations will be taken. Cash donations will also be forwarded to the food bank if you don't want to lug around a can of soup. So we'll make sure that support goes forward. Just as a side note, I will ask how Councillor Jameson, has there been a date set for July 1st Canada Day celebrations, or is that still in the mix?
I'm sorry, will there be? Yes.
And the reason I ask is because last year the date had shifted, so I wasn't sure if it was happening on the 1st or if it was happening a day later, day before, what have you.
No, I believe they're on track because all the insurance thing has been sorted out in the community, and I thank our friends at Sabara for standing up with the Canada Day Festival and organizing the insurance. But my understanding is we'll probably have Canada Day on Canada Day.
How lovely. Thank
Yes.
you. So I bring that up because people need to put that sort of thing in their schedule. Also, in July, we will have the Lansdowne Fair. And I don't have the dates in front of me, but it's usually the third weekend in July. And that'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 14, no, it's the 21st. Yes, it's sort of a weekend later. So anyways, opening ceremonies will be Friday night at 7 p.m. As well as all the other regular festivities that happen on fair weekend. So please make sure you mark that on your calendars so that everybody can come out, see family and friends. And please, I would encourage people to start working on exhibits in our local red building, whether that be gardening, baking, sewing, and all of the like that are in that. So am I missing anything, anyone? Go ahead, Councillor Fody. Oh, sorry. So thank you for the reminder, Councillor Fody. So Wednesday night will be a special council meeting at 6 p.m. Sorry. I have a few meetings this week, so please bear with me. At 6 p.m., we will entertain all 7 candidates that have 6. Oh, I thought there were 7. Again, my apologies. So 6 candidates that will be coming forward for the interview process to fill the vacancy in Ward 2. And we thank each and every one of you who have stepped forward to offer your skill set for the job. And we look forward to meeting all the candidates. There's how many? 8? Yeah. 8. My apologies. I was trying to watch the count and I misheard you. My apologies. 8 candidates that will be here. So it will be a meeting to remember. We'll get to meet some concerned citizens that are interested in leaving a mark on municipal government, which I think is very exciting and kind of interesting the way it's all turned out. So we look forward to that. The package has been posted to our website. So for members of the public who are interested to learn more about the candidates, that has been posted on our website for anybody's perusal. And then once the decision is made after the 11th, there will be a swearing in ceremony on May the 18th. I believe. Yes. Sorry, I'm going by memory. It's a Thursday. So before the long weekend. So we will be reporting back after Wednesday to let everybody know how that turns out. Anything else I'm missing, gentlemen? Counselor, maybe? Go ahead.
As most of you know, I am the town crier for Gananoque and do things in the township. So, oh yay, oh yay, oh yay. Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, my lords and ladies. On this day, Saturday, May 6, 2023, we announce, affirm, and celebrate the coronation by rightful and ancient custom of Charles Philip Arthur George, our lawful and rightful liege Lord Charles III. By the grace of God of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, head of the Commonwealth, and defender of the faith. We likewise celebrate the coronation of the Queen Consort, Her Majesty Queen Camilla. We respectfully ask that all loyal subjects do reverently mark, joyfully celebrate, and commit to the posterity this unique occasion. Wishing the sovereigns a long, happy, healthy, inclusive, and successful reign. We join together in proclaiming God save the King.
Thank you for that. As
one other-
many people might be reminded that we do take oaths here as we are sworn in to the monarchy as part of our oath of office. So thank you for adding that. Go ahead.
Do have one announcement because we went down the July 1st thing is that there is in Gananoque, but it's also the Rib Fest weekend in the Gananoque. So I'm sure we'll see many people there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other announcements? Seeing no other announcements, I'll move forward in the agenda with the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaws 23-031, 23-032, 23-033, 23-034, and that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw 23-035, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands at its May 1st Committee of the Whole meeting and May 8th Council meeting. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. Moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Fody, that council adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Good night, everybody.